Morning, everybody. My name is Eric Chaconis. Welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. I teach our extremity management course along with Lindsay Huey and Mark Gallant. Today is Clinical Tuesday. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my recent experiences in creating a new DPT program. And so I think this is an important topic to discuss because if you talk to most people in our profession, they would say the last thing we need is another PT program, right? We've got a proliferation of PT programs in the United States. It's getting out of control. Why do we need another PT program? And so a little bit of background. Obviously been here, I think most of you that have seen our show before and been following us for a long time. I've been working with Jeff and at ICE for probably about maybe 7 or 8 years now. But before that, and all the time through that for the last decade or over a decade, I've been teaching an entry-level DPT education. And that's actually how Jeff and I met and became friends originally in 2008, 2007. I was doing a fellowship. He was at the end of his time in PT school, and that's how we used to work together and hang out back then. Anyway, since then, I was always teaching in entry-level education all that time in musculoskeletal orthopedic courses and imaging and differential diagnosis and research courses like that. And actually a lot of the impetus behind the extremity management course was because I would always see so many students struggling with exercise prescription. And so, we wanted to create a continuing education course that addressed that helped people understand dosing and specific parameters for prescribing exercise and progressing exercise, and package that along with manual therapy and diagnostics and kind of package that all into a weekend seminar. So that's the background behind extremity management. But anyway, in the last few years, I've changed gears and been working for a school in Green Bay, Wisconsin, so Bellin College. And so the Evidence in Motion Fellowship, that transitioned over to Bellin College, and so I've been working in that program along with the Doctor of Science for the last few years. But we just created a new DPT program that's going to launch next year. And so I wanted to share some of my experiences in creating this program and why I think in some cases a new PT school is warranted if certain parameters are going to be met. And so first of all, physical therapy in the job market, when we look at the job market overall, yes, there's been a shortage of physical therapists for the past 20 years. We've been working in a shortage, right? There's been high demand, really not enough physical therapists to meet the demand. So that's in a lot of ways the impetus behind this huge growth in physical therapy schools. We see new programs popping up every year. Part of that is because the demand, right? We just had a really high demand. We've been in a deficit for so long. That a lot of people think is going to change, though. A lot of people think the job market is going to maybe dry up. There's an oversaturation of physical therapists in the market, and so maybe it won't always be in this demand, even though we have projections that look out even over the next 10 years, still seeing a demand for our profession. But here's the thing. Number one, it's regional. So it's like real estate. Yes, you have a national real estate market, but really what you have is tons of little small markets. And so what might be in one city saturation of a profession, in another city there's still a deficit, right? So especially we see this in rural regions of the country. So like where we are in northeastern Wisconsin, where we have all these rural areas, and really there's no physical therapy school in that area. So there's nobody recruiting students from those rural areas who can then go back and join the workforce, the physical therapy workforce in that region. The Upper Peninsula of Michigan and northeastern Wisconsin is really what we have in this situation for the school I'm involved in. And so that's an issue that continues to persist that we need to address, right? Is that we have to recruit students from these rural areas to treat those patients so that they're not underserved. The other thing is we see changes in the population. So as demand for healthcare on the whole changes, as demand for people seeking care for musculoskeletal pain or neurological care or cardiovascular conditions, all the conditions that we see as physical therapists, as that demand changes, then the job market for physical therapists demand increases there as well, right? So with the aging population, different regions of the country, you have the same issue where demand's gonna increase and it's warranted to train more physical therapists to go and join the workforce in those regions. The other thing is to think about is our profession currently and what market share we have right now when it comes to a lot of these different conditions. So for instance, low back pain. We see about 13% of the people that enter the healthcare system for low back pain get seen by a physical therapist. We think that's extremely low. That number should increase dramatically, right? So as more and more people opt for rehab and exercise and common sense conservative interventions over drugs, surgery, and imaging, and that 13% grows to 20% or 25%, you're going to see an exponential demand increase for physical therapists. So it's warranted. The demand is certainly there in that degree. And then the other thing to think about is scope of practice and what we do. As healthcare on the whole gets more preventative in nature, as we finally wake up and learn that prevention is where it's at, and the more that we can stay ahead of these conditions, intervene early on the front end and get people out of the healthcare system, prevent them from entering the system, then that's a more efficient and effective healthcare system right there. So if that takes off and physical therapists take the lead in that, I mean, how we play this hand over the next decade is totally going to dictate how this pans out. But if that occurs, then you're going to see obviously increased demand there. So that's my opinion on the back end. I'd love to hear in the comments what you think about the future of the profession, growing programs, and do we need more programs? And I think a lot of people, the consensus amongst most physical therapists is we don't need more programs. Salaries are going to go down, less jobs are going to be available, but everything that I outlined just now, you have to consider that and think about a growing profession and growing demand. The other thing is, the smaller a profession, the less a profession meets the demands of society, the more other professions can come in and meet those demands. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but generally speaking, because of the shortage of physical therapists years ago, for the past 20 years, you do see in a lot of markets an increase in other providers meeting those demands. So, people might seek out the care of a chiropractor or a massage therapist or some other provider who can perform conservative interventions in exchange of, or instead of drug, surgery, and imaging. Then maybe that changes the market as well. So what I've learned over the last 2 years in creating this program is you must address the pain points in today's physical therapy education system. So what we're doing at Bellin College is we got to say, all right, sort of take a play out of South College's book, right? And you hear us mention South College a lot in our meetings because we look at them and what they did as disruptors in the physical therapy industry, educational industry, just not too long ago, right? Maybe 5 years ago. And so it needs to be quicker, a shorter program. It needs to be less expensive. And you have to innovate. And so that's what we are trying to do. So a couple things I want to hit on here that I think are very important for new physical therapy programs that we are trying to do at Bellin College. Number one, it must be a cheaper program. The only way I would agree to do this is if the administrators and the leadership of the school say, we agree with you. There is an increase in tuition across the board for most PT schools. This is not okay. We must come in at a lower price point. And so, that's just simply looking at the bubble that potentially could be here, right? In physical therapy. At some point, it's not worth it. At some point, the cost of education is too high and the salary makes sense versus the cost of education to enter school. And so people are going to stop going, right? You got to be able to address that. So you got to come in cheaper. So that's my whole thing with us is we have to be the least expensive school in the state when you compare us to all other private schools. And really, we're probably the least expensive private school when you compare us to all other schools in the country. I mean, we are at the very low end of all. I mean, we're close to the tuition of the public schools without any public funding. The way you do that is you control your profit margins. Being able to say, we are okay with a very small profit margin. We are going to operate this program in a lean and efficient manner. It's not going to be a cash cow. It's not going to be something that we're going to make tons of money off of. We are going to do it the right way for the future of the profession. And so that's kind of the impetus behind that. Another thing is, and I'm very passionate about this, is clinical education must be on point. What we tend to do in physical therapy education is we train our students. They're in the classroom with us for a year and a half, whatever. We send them out to the clinic and we just pray that it's going to go well, right? And yes, there are some mechanisms in place, and we want our CIs to be APTA credentialed, and we have mechanisms to look at the quality of the clinical experience, but that tends to be a challenge. And I think the way you do it is teaming up with a health system or multiple health systems. Health systems that have multiple clinics where you can really control the quality of the clinical education. Not to say that we're not sending students out to small private practices. We absolutely are, because those clinics provide some of the most valuable learning experiences, especially when you look at business and marketing and how do we keep the doors open? How do we keep this place running? We need the students to see that experience. But generally speaking, what I'm very passionate about is sending the students out for clinical learning day one. So in the whole first year of the program, you're out in the clinic 1 day a week, learning and practicing the skills that you learned in the classroom. You're learning and practicing those skills in the clinic, in the real life scenario. I always was frustrated as a faculty member at how the learning in the classroom is just suboptimal, right? I mean, there's only so much you can do to enhance that learning experience without the hands-on component where you're out physically using those skills on another human being, not another student, another human being who's seeking your care. That's a game changer for me. So, we're lucky that we have big health systems in the region that can work with us. And so we're able to bring the students out on internship the whole first year. Every day they're in the clinic practicing those skills. So that's really key. Obviously, all the basic stuff, right, that you have to have in a modern curriculum. Modern strength and conditioning principles. We must have a course specific to exercise dosing and prescription and understanding modern day strength and conditioning principles. So all the stuff that we're preaching at ICE, with really pushing patients and not having one rep living, right? Like that all needs to be in the school too, right? So that's key. Business and entrepreneurship. They must learn more skills related to business, billing, coding, understand that arm of the profession. Most schools have one class on that. That can be challenging to jam all that stuff in. So what you do is, yes, you put it in one course, but you thread it through the entire curriculum. So in the musculoskeletal course, you're learning about knee osteoarthritis. At the same time, you're learning how to market your services to that population of patients. At the same time, you're learning some of the underlying billing and coding issues related to that diagnosis. So you can really thread it through a variety of courses and make it really fun. Prevention and wellness. Nutrition, all that stuff kind of is just goes right. We must have that in the modern day curriculum. Clinical reasoning, right? Must have a strong clinical reasoning component that's threaded. We're lucky in that we have this DPT program followed by a fellowship and a doctor of science. And then we have a lot of our fellows coming from residencies, right? So orthopedic residencies. So you can thread this clinical reasoning model throughout the whole continuum of learning and have a sort of a fellowship's the top of the sort of training, right? But you can take that and you can package it in a way that's appropriate for entry-level education as well. So that's another important element to it as well. I think the soft skills are probably the most important thing you can teach, and that must be threaded through the curriculum. So having the students really learning communication and empathy and how to connect with people and how to deliver therapeutic alliance. So it's that must be purposefully embedded into the learning experience and purposely embedded into the learning assessment. So when you take a practical exam, you're graded on your soft skills, right? That's just common sense stuff that we really need to integrate. And then duration. I think it's hard to get all of that into a really short period of time. That can be challenging, but we got to have a quicker PT school experience for people. 3 years is probably a little too long. The more we can trim off of that, the better, and have it be a little bit of a shorter. And we've learned that. South College has proven that in 2 years, you can have an effective and successful educational experience, graduate clinicians that are ready to hit the ground running and provide excellent care. And so, we're trying to sort of do that at Bellin College and sort of mirror that. And we can't get it on in just 2 years. We're a little bit beyond that with a couple extra semesters, but getting it done in under 3 years is really super important. So anyway, love to hear your thoughts and questions. If anybody, I want to get some here. So Henry says, I'd also love to see business education for the practitioners too. Yeah. Oh, you mean out in the continuing education world, I assume, for those that are already licensed and provide. That's true, actually. That's probably, you've seen more of that today than you ever have before. It's trending in the right direction. I think it's probably slanted so heavily towards cash pay education, right? How to open a cash pay practice, and a lot of people teaching that content. But you're right, Henry. I think we do need more broader business education across the whole profession, not just in PT school, but really everywhere. So thanks for that. All righty, take care, everybody. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.